You know the image. Parades, flags, fireworks, a nation singing in unison. Independence Day. It's the most important day on the calendar for most countries. It is the day they became themselves. But have you ever truly wondered? Independence from whom? How did they get it? Why that date? And what about the nations that never had one at all? Because behind every Independence Day lies a far deeper, more complex story. One of brutal colonization, profound trauma, or sometimes quiet, calculated diplomacy. Today, we're not just looking at dates on a calendar. We're going around the world to uncover what those stories really mean. Prepare to unlearn what you thought you knew. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more videos like this. Let's begin not with the first country to gain independence, but the one that arguably made the idea of it famous, the United States. In 1776, the American colonies, fueled by Enlightenment ideals and a growing frustration with distant British rule, declare a radical break from the mighty British Empire. This wasn't just a revolution in arms. It was a revolutionary idea. That sovereignty derived not from kings or divine right, but truly, it came from the will of the people they governed. The Declaration of Independence. More than just a formal breakup letter, was a profound philosophical blueprint for self-governance that would echo across continents for centuries, inspiring countless other struggles for freedom. Guess what? This blueprint spread like wildfire. In Latin America, Spain's powerful empire started to fall apart. This was because it was weakened by a lot of internal disagreements and conflicts, and also by the enormous size of its distant territories, which made them difficult to control. By the early 1800s, iconic figures like Simon Bolivar, known as the Liberator, and José de San Martín, the protector of Peru, were rallying entire regions, leading armies across mountains and plains to throw off colonial rule. But imagine the diverse challenges they faced. Their struggles weren't carbon copies of a single unified revolution. Across all Latin America, each fight for self-determination followed a different path. Take Mexico's independence, which ignited in 1810. It didn't start with generals or political manifestos, but with a humble priest, Miguel Hidalgo, whose passionate cry, known as El Grito de Dolores, on a Sunday morning sparked a spontaneous, brutal mass uprising. This was a spiritual and political rebellion, fought not just by elites, but by the indigenous and mestizo populations, a deeply rooted fight for dignity. Meanwhile, Argentina's journey was an entirely different beast, a slower, more elite-led movement that carefully navigated the political landscape, before eventually casting off the Spanish crown. Across the region, these revolutions were less about instant, perfect democracies and more about a profound, often bloody, reshaping of deeply entrenched colonial aristocracies. Each nation's path was unique, born from its specific history and social fabric. Latin America was mostly ruled by the Spanish crown, but one of the most fascinating independence movements happened far from their reach. Haiti, 1804. This was no ordinary independence struggle. Here, the enslaved people of Saint-Domingue, the wealthiest French colony built on their unimaginable suffering, rose up against their brutal oppressors. Led by figures like Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, they achieved the impossible. They defeated not just local colonial forces, but also the formidable armies of France, Britain, and Spain, even Napoleon's elite troops. They forged the first free black republic in the world, shattering the myth of racial inferiority and proving that freedom belonged to all. This wasn't just a fight for political sovereignty. It was a brutal existential battle for their very humanity and their right to exist as free people. But their unprecedented victory came at an unimaginable, cruel cost. France, enraged and humiliated by their loss, demanded crippling reparations, not for its own war costs, but for the property they lost, the former slaves themselves and the plantations. For over a century, Haiti was forced to pay an astronomical sum, equivalent to billions in today's money, a debt that systematically choked its economic and political development. To this day, Haiti's independence is celebrated, a beacon of courage linked together to its unjust punishment. It's a harrowing lesson in the true, often brutal, price of daring to be free when others benefit from your subjugation. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Brazil's independence took an entirely different, almost paradoxical path. Here, you won't find violent, bloody wars of liberation or widespread popular revolutions from below. In 1822, facing a growing independence movement and a desire to retain Portuguese influence, the Portuguese prince himself, Dom Pedro, declared Brazil independent from his own father, King João VI of Portugal. Legend says he simply drew his sword and proclaimed independence or death. This was a remarkably peaceful, albeit imperial, transition of power. Brazil maintained its monarchy for another 67 years before it finally became a republic. This unique top-down approach meant less bloodshed, but also a slower transition to democratic ideals and the painful continuation of slavery for decades. It's powerful proof that not every declaration of independence needs violent bloodshed to count, but also a reminder that different paths to freedom carry different legacies. Has now crossed the ocean to Africa, a continent whose history was tragically reshaped by colonial ambition. European powers carved up its diverse indigenous lands with random borders drawn at meetings like the Berlin Conference, creating artificial nations and erasing centuries of local tradition. After the devastation of World War II, as European powers weakened, a dramatic cascade of African nations began to break free from colonial shackles. Ghana in 1957 became the roaring first in sub-Saharan Africa, a moment of immense pride and hope for the entire continent. Its visionary leader, Kwame Nkrumah, didn't just declare independence. He imagined a unified, powerful Pan-African future, a continent free and prosperous. But those dreams didn't always match brutal realities. The Congo, for instance, freed from Belgium in 1960, plunged almost immediately into chaos. Decades of ruthless, extractive colonial rule had deliberately left no functioning institutions, no educated elite, no plan for stable self-governance. The Belgians pulled out, leaving a power vacuum and a legacy of division. Independence came, and tragically, so did civil war, proxy conflicts, and eventually a brutal dictator, followed by decades of profound instability. It's a stark example of how colonial legacies can cripple a nation's ability to truly embrace its freedom. Then there's Algeria, where France clung to power with shocking and desperate violence, seeing it as an integral part of France itself. The struggle for Algerian independence became a brutal, bloody war, with over 1 million Algerians dying in the horrific conflict. In 1962, Algeria finally achieved its hard-won independence. But the deep, bitter wounds of that brutal conflict are still fresh, still shaping the nation's identity and its relationship with France today. It's a powerful and painful reminder of the cost of freedom when empires refuse to let go. On the other hand, in India, the fight for independence looked remarkably different again. The movement led by Mahatma Gandhi wasn't built on guns or armies, but on the revolutionary power of non-violent civil disobedience. His iconic Salt March wasn't just about salt. It was a defiant act against British colonial monopolies, a symbol of moral clarity that stunned the mighty British Empire and galvanized millions. And yet, when independence finally arrived in 1947, it came with a heartbreaking, monumental cost: partition. The hasty creation of two separate nations, India and Pakistan, based on religious lines, triggered one of the largest and most violent mass migrations in human history. Millions of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs were displaced, forced to flee their homes across hastily drawn borders. The result was unspeakable communal violence, claiming over 1 million lives. Independence. Yes, a joyous liberation from colonial rule. But a nation tragically torn in two, its birth left a deep scar and a painful legacy that still echoes today. Just across that new, violent border, Bangladesh would later have to fight twice first as East Pakistan. And then in 1971, with the aid of India, against West Pakistan, to truly carve out its own distinct existence. Its independence was literally born from civil war, a testament to enduring struggles for identity and self-determination within broader post-colonial boundaries. On another path, consider Indonesia independence in 1945. After centuries under brutal Dutch colonial rule, and then a brutal Japanese occupation during World War II, nationalist leader Sukarno boldly declared independence. But the Dutch weren't ready to let go of their incredibly rich colony so easily. What followed wasn't a peaceful transition, but for more agonizing years of intense warfare, known as the Indonesian National Revolution, before Indonesia's sovereignty was finally recognized by the world. The declaration was a spark, but recognition required a prolonged, costly fight. Contrast that with the Philippines, a nation that declared independence from Spain in 1898 after the Spanish-American War, only to be immediately handed off to the U.S. like a colonial prize, sparking the brutal Philippine-American War. Filipinos had to fight another colonial power, this time the Americans, for their freedom. Full sovereignty, truly their own, didn't come until 1946, nearly 50 years after their initial declaration. It's a powerful reminder that independence is rarely a straight line, and sometimes one colonial power simply replaces another. While many nations fought for their freedom, some found it through remarkably peaceful separation. Norway simply walked away from its union with Sweden in 1905. After centuries under Danish and then Swedish rule, there was no war, nor bloodshed, just a powerful referendum and shrewd political negotiation. It was a model of peaceful dissolution. Decades later, the post-Cold War world saw similar shifts. Czechoslovakia split into the Czech Republic and Slovakia in 1993. Famously dubbed the Velvet Divorce for its calm, negotiated separation. Driven by distinct national identities, finally able to emerge. But other unions fell apart violently, leaving deep wounds that resonate to this day. The mighty Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, not with a bang, but a whimper, birthing 15 new independent countries like Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Estonia, and so many more from its vast empire. Each emerged with their own new flag, new anthem, and new, often hard-won, independence days. Navigating their distinct historical legacies and complex relationships with their former Soviet master, but the bloodiest independence wars in modern Europe erupted not in the Soviet Union, but in Yugoslavia. Its breakup in the early 1990s brought a horrific wave of wars, ethnic cleansing, and years of profound instability in the Balkans. It was a brutal struggle for self-determination among its constituent republics. But from that profound tragedy, new nations emerged: Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Kosovo, Montenegro, and North Macedonia. Each nation broke away to claim its independence, driven by hopes of self-rule, often won through brutal wars and immense human suffering. But what about the countries that never had to fight for independence? Truly unique few, whose histories stand apart from the colonial narrative. Thailand in Southeast Asia stands out. It skillfully took advantage of the rivalry between Britain and France, playing them against each other throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, using it to modernize and reform while protecting its independence and avoiding direct occupation. It's a remarkable story of diplomatic finesse in a perilous era. Another similar example is Nepal, nestled high in the Himalayas between two giants, India and China, managed to remain sovereign and was never formally colonized by any foreign power. Its ancient kingdoms, protected by formidable mountain ranges and strong local rulers, successfully fended off all attempts at foreign domination, including the mighty British Empire. It's a land of ancient traditions and unbroken independence. Luckily, other countries outside of Asia also could stand their ground against European colonialism. In stark contrast to nearly all of Africa, Ethiopia proudly stands as the continent's oldest independent state. For millennia, its emperors and peoples consistently fended off various external forces, including Arab incursions and, crucially, European colonial powers. While briefly occupied by Italy in the 20th century, its fierce resistance, a victorious anti-colonial struggle, and its unique cultural history meant it never truly succumbed to full colonization, a rare symbol of lasting sovereignty in a continent dominated by foreign empires. On our next example, we move to the Pacific, into the Kingdom of Tonga, that offers another unique narrative. Unlike many of its island neighbors, Tonga never lost its indigenous monarchy. Through diplomacy, including treaties with Great Britain, it managed to avoid outright annexation by European powers. Instead, it became a British protectorate by choice, which protected its sovereignty, eventually regaining full sovereign control peacefully in 1970. It's a true testament to resilience and strategic leadership in Oceania, preserving its cultural heritage. Then we moved to Japan, a nation that consciously embraced modernization, avoiding Western domination, and then became an imperial power itself. Japan was also never formally colonized by Western powers. Its dramatic transformation from a largely isolated feudal society to a global power was driven by its desire to preserve its own sovereignty in a world of empires. And then there's San Marino, a tiny enclave nestled within Italy, often overlooked on global maps. It boasts a mind-boggling history of continuous independence since the year 301 AD. Believed to be the oldest republic in the world, it famously offered refuge to persecuted Christians. No need for a grand revolution or colonial chains. It's just a rich history, smart diplomacy, and those protective mountains keeping their ancient freedoms safe. Finally, we move to the countries that's still waiting for independence. Some nations and communities are still hoping for their moment to shine and for the right to self-determination to be fully recognized. Palestine, Kurdistan, Western Sahara, these places are deeply felt in the hearts of their people, yet they often struggle for full recognition at the United Nations. Their ongoing struggles for statehood and self-determination remain critical and often contested geopolitical issues. And finally, some countries have independence, but with nuanced, sometimes complex histories that differ from the dramatic break of a revolution. Canada and Australia slowly gained their independence over the years, evolving from British rule instead of fighting a war. Their national days, like Canada Day or Australia Day, feel deeply patriotic, but they celebrate gradual constitutional shifts, not fiery, rebellious battles. It's a different, less confrontational kind of freedom, reflecting a unique path within the Commonwealth. So, how many countries celebrate an Independence Day? Over 170, each one unique. Some loud, filled with joyous explosions, some solemn, marked by quiet remembrance, some still hotly debated, their meanings contested and evolving, but they all wonder, who are we when we're truly free? Because independence isn't just a date on the calendar, it's a story of what we lost and what we fought for. Understanding these deeper stories helps us really appreciate the rich journey of nations that make up our world. Which of these untold independence stories surprised you most? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.